does it look like?
It looks like me.
That's right. I want you to do everything that you can to knock your toy down. Who is the strongest in class? Jeron, come on up, please. I'm going to give Jeron a prop, and he's going to try to knock it off the table. Ready, Jeron? Okay, children, who can tell me what it means to have resilience? Yes, Paige?
Resilience means if you make the toy fall down, it'll come back up very, very fast.
Very nice.
All right, hi guys. Welcome to our resilience webcast. This is our first time testing this out, so be gentle with us. But it is great to kind of get this up and running as a resource that is a collaboration with ourselves in the counselling service and the lovely Leah in the Students' Union. My name is Nisha Webb and I'm an assistant psychologist in the counselling service. I'll leave it to the ladies to introduce themselves.
Yeah, so hello everyone, my name is Leah. I'm this year's Welfare and Equality Officer at TCDSU and I'm delighted to be with you today.
Hi everyone, my name is Laura. I'm another assistant psychologist from the Student Counselling Service.
And that's us in a nutshell, I think. So the topic of today's webcast is resilience and what are the different factors that goes into kind of the ingredients of a resilient person, because it's not necessarily something that, you know, we have within us or it's innate, and it's a skill that we can build on and hone in on. So I'm going to pass it over to you, Leah, to get started.
Perfect. Thanks very much, Nisha. And just echoing what Nisha said there, I think it's so important now more than ever that students are kind of fostering their own resilience. And, you know, to me, resilience is how we bounce back after hard times. So that brings us on to the next part of this presentation. And it says, what is resilience? So according to the Cambridge Dictionary, there's kind of two breakdowns of resilience. So there's a psychology definition and a biology one too. So the psychology one poses that resilience is the ability to be happy after something difficult has happened, and the biology one, which I thought was interesting because it does allow us to kind of externalize that personal piece, and it's the ability of a substance to return to its usual shape after being bent, stretched or pressed. So as I said, the ability to bounce back after hard times, and you would have saw a really cute video there before about how to bounce back. So I suppose we're going to give you today some tangible tools about how you can foster your own resilience. And I'm going to start. So I'm going to begin with a tangible tool, which is self-awareness. So in order to be resilient, you must be self-aware. And so I would ask you all to get to know yourself, your strengths, your areas of improvement, and everything else, because I think it all starts with that kind of self-awareness piece. And so how can we go about doing this? So that brings us on to a practice I really enjoy and something that I think facilitates resilience, and that is reflection journaling. So what is reflection journaling? So essentially, it's just free writing. It's checking in with yourself. You can write about your day, what went well, what didn't go so well, what's going on at the moment, what's gone on in the past, and how has it made you feel, and how can you move on from that. So that action point at the end is imperative to fostering your own resilience. So that is something that we can all adopt, and I'd urge you all to. You can feel a little bit weird at the beginning. You're like, what am I going to write about? But anything, just put pen to paper. And on that, Writing is a really mindful practice. And again, resilient people are mindful. So the idea of mindfulness, and by putting pen to paper, you're really focusing on the present. You're aware of what's happening in the here and in the now. And I like to break this down into 3 stages. So to feel whatever you're feeling, allow yourself to feel, then process, and then move on. And I think that process piece is key, because then you're not just going through the motions, you're starting to understand why you're feeling a particular way and how you can move on from that feeling. So we're not trying to ruminate here, we're trying to look towards the future. And that brings me on to the final piece of being self-aware, and that's purpose. So when we want to move on from hard times, it's important we have something to move on to. And I think purpose is really important for that piece. So I'd ask you all to ask yourself these questions. What gets you up in the morning? What's important to you? And what keeps you going? And once we can understand those kind of core beliefs, we can find the motivation to then move forward and to bounce back. So for example, if education, learning, knowledge, prosperity, all of that appeals to you and is really important to you, then you might get up and go to your lecture, you know, after maybe a test result that you weren't so happy with, or so on. So yeah, they're my key takeaways for today. I'll move you on to Laura, who's going to speak a little bit about self-compassion.
Thanks, Leah. Yeah, so I'm just going to chat a bit around kind of self-compassion and how we can kind of being more compassionate towards ourselves, and a few tips about that. So first of all, what is self-compassion? So it sounds really simple, but maybe isn't always as easily done. But basically with self-compassion, we're just giving ourselves the same kindness and care that we would give to a good friend. So we're speaking as we would to somebody that we care about and that we're really good to. And this kind of leads on then into kind of self-acceptance and how important that is in terms of self-compassion, because we need to kind of accept ourselves in order to be compassionate with ourselves as well. So what is self-acceptance? So that is basically just living in line with one's true self, and we often refer to this as authenticity. And when we are authentic and just kind of, you know, living in line with our values and our goals, this results in increased motivation and drive, and it also has loads of other mental health benefits as well that I'm going to kind of talk about as well. And yeah, when we are kind of being more authentic, we're also kind of in turn, you know, minimizing negative thoughts and kind of self-doubt. And, you know, self-compassion is really important for this. So that kind of brings us on then around how do we go about this? And something that is really important is how we talk to ourselves. So if we're being really harsh and kind of, you know, having really punishing self-talk, we can kind of refer to that as our inner critic. And our inner critic can turn a bad day into something much, much worse. And I mean, even if you kind of just think about how you speak to yourself when you're going through maybe a really tough time or, you know, a really bad moment in time, we can often be really self-critical. And if you just want to take a moment when we're in those situations, just kind of imagine that kind of self-critic just stepping outside of you and just kind of getting in touch with that kind of self-compassion and kind of self-acceptance again. I suppose when we are in that space, when we're going through a really tough time, when we've messed up or we're angry with ourselves, you know, our feelings kind of all become congealed and we kind of find that they might be defining who we are. So we want to kind of in those moments just act the same way towards ourselves when we're having a difficult time, that we would towards a friend, that we would comfort and kind of care for in that moment. So instead of kind of judging ourselves and criticizing ourselves, we're kind of being more understanding and kind towards ourselves when we kind of go through personal failures or any other kind of difficulties. And that kind of brings us in then to positive self-talk. So this is just kind of reinforcing, you know, how positive self-talk can reduce anxiety. increase effort and enhance self-confidence. So when we're moving away from that more kind of critical approach and we're kind of using positive self-talk to get us through those tough times, it has actually been shown in studies that positive self-talk can reduce anxiety, it can increase effort and enhance self-confidence. And I think it's really beneficial as well in terms of having more of a growth mindset, that when we do go through hard times that we're learning from them and we're, talking to ourselves, positively and in a supportive manner to get us through. So that kind of leads us on then to mindfulness. And kind of how mindfulness links in with self-compassion is that self-compassion also requires taking a balanced approach to our negative emotions so that feelings are neither suppressed nor exaggerated. And mindfulness can really help us to do this. So we're not saying that, you're never going to have a negative thought, or that it's bad to have negative thoughts. We want to just be mindful of, how we attach to different thoughts and feelings. So just a little bit more about mindfulness, and I know Leah touched on it earlier as well, but mindfulness is basically just when we're in a non-judgmental, receptive mind state, where we just kind of observe thoughts and feelings as they are without trying to suppress or deny them. And this is so important for self-compassion because we can't ignore our pain and also feel self-compassion at the same time. But we also don't want to over-identify with negative thoughts and feelings that we're kind of caught up in this vicious cycle. So this is where we just really emphasize that kind of balanced approach, where we're not suppressing or exaggerating feelings. And this mindfulness can be a really positive way to go about that. And that's the end for me. So I'm just going to pass you over to Nisha.
Okay, so I suppose I'm going to be echoing some of the topics that Laura and Leah have touched on, and looking at different tools to kind of come at it from, I suppose, that perspective of your outlook and how you kind of view the world. So when we talk about resilience, we don't necessarily mean that resilient people never have setbacks, never have a tough time. But really that piece that Leah mentioned earlier is that I get knocked down, but I get knocked up again, or I get back up again. You're never going to get me down. So one of the things that the studies have shown us about resilient people is kind of their outlook and different ways of seeing the world. We all know that example of, is the glass half full? Is it half empty? Most of us at this point of lockdown just want to share a glass of something with friends, but it really does kind of give you that perspective on how am I approaching things. So while pessimism and optimism are they're at polar ends of the kind of spectrum, they actually both have their benefits. So a lot of people just assume pessimistic is, a negative, but it can really be seen as a strength in certain ways. See, a healthy amount of pessimism is necessary to be realistic and live in the moment, like the girls were saying. So, it can be used as a defense so that you mind yourself, that you manage your expectations. If you're pessimistic about a certain situation, you're going to look at a challenge and say, okay, what are the roadblocks? What are the challenges I'm going to face with that? But how can I problem solve around it? And I suppose the bad rep pessimism gives is when it becomes overly critical and it's, it's not 50-50 anymore, but then when it takes over, then it's not helping us and it's not serving us anymore. So what we would really recommend, and the studies have shown for, kind of quite resilient people, is that you're balancing your optimism with that piece of defensive pessimism. So not everything has to be rosy. We don't have to force, a positive mindset on everything, but that we can look at it from a balanced perspective and realistically. So you can hope for the best and be, really optimistic about what's coming down the line, but you can still steel yourself and manage your expectations if, there's any bumps along the way that do knock you down. So one of the ways that you can do this and kind of manage that optimism and pessimism is when you notice your thoughts, you challenge your thoughts, and you look at how you can change that thinking. So what that means is noticing your thoughts is recognizing they're not true. Just because you might have the thought, oh, such and such hates me, that's not true. That's not objective. That's influenced by your perspective. And that's where that's coming from. So when you're challenging them, you're challenging yourself by asking, is this a useful way? Is this helpful to think about it? Or is it going to lead me to those kind of critical feelings and negativity? So then when you're changing your thinking, again, it's taking that, realistic perspective of, well, what's another way that we can look at this? And those are really nice prompts to kind of hold in mind. So if we look at a situation, say, everybody's wearing their face masks, but somebody might be rude about it, saying, you're not wearing it right, or, it's not very pretty or something. So a very pessimistic perspective might be like, how rude they are, they are, that's not nice at all. I'm done with that person. That would be quite pessimistic about them. If you're internalizing it and looking at, what have I done wrong now? I knew this was, wrong about me. That's very pessimistic about yourself. If you were to say to yourself, I'm just going to ignore you, I'm not even going to focus in on that, like, away from me, that's optimistic. It is an optimistic outlook, but it's also almost overly optimistic. And if you were looking at it from a balanced perspective, you'd kind of think, what's a more helpful way of looking at this? Okay, that person was rude. I wonder what's going on for them. Are they having a tough day? Is there something that, we need to talk about if they're a friend, So it's just an example of how to kind of balance that internal dialogue that we're having. And I suppose you can't really talk about resilience without mentioning gratitude. Gratitude fosters optimism, but it also, optimism fosters gratitude. And I saw this picture, which I thought was, pretty topical given the circumstances. 2020 has been really rough for all of us. We had different expectations, even, being able to go traveling, we thought we would get that. We were optimistic about it. But replacing that optimism is gratitude for what we do have, so that we're appreciating, kind of what we have now. And in positive psychology, gratitude is just the human way that we acknowledge what are the good things that we have in life. It's an emotional response just as much as it is a cognitive response, and it's how we perceive, giving or receiving, gifts or benefits in our lives. So to be very, very practical on how to notice and be thankful for those good things, because sometimes, we have to face it, it is a tough time, things are crap, and, how do we find what is good? Well, these are some of the steps that, you can directly make, and that is including writing a thank you letter, keeping a daily gratitude journal, similar to kind of what Leah was saying, that would be something you could add to it, or a daily reflection. So just to explain a bit more about those practical tools. If you're writing somebody a thank you letter, can you even remember the last time you might have done that? Was it to your primary school teacher when you were finishing up? Who knows, but it's actually something that's really, really beneficial for fostering that gratitude. So if you were to think of someone that's made some kind of a difference in your life, it could even be, the person at the deli counter who makes your chicken fillet sambos. If you were to tell them exactly, what have they helped you with, that extra mayo or cheese might not seem like much to you, but I was having a really tough day, and, you being so sound really helped pick me up. And using those two important words of just thank you. It seems very simple and very straightforward, but it really does have a big impact for you and for others. I suppose the gratitude journal, this is an interesting one, because studies have shown us that, after people have completed a gratitude writing exercise, it's shown healthier eating behaviors, it's shown, kind of fostering really good habits. So even though it's one mindful piece of time and activity that you can do, it actually has a big knock-on effects onto your other habits and behaviors and how you're doing, and does have a big impact on your emotions as well. So some prompts for this is to think about, what were the silver linings for me today? Okay, yeah, it was, a tough day, but what can I take from this, that was positive? Even if it's a negative situation and, you avoided an accident, oh, Janie, I'm really grateful that, I avoided that situation. So that would be something that you could pile on top of and add to Leah's little tool as well. Or if you don't, and if you're cut for time and you're short, what we would recommend is just a daily reflection and check-in. What we would say is, for 5 days, Monday to Friday, school, lectures, week, keep a list by your bed, and then at the end of every day, add 3 things to it that you were grateful for in that day. We'd suggest, try and kind of mix it up. So if one day you're grateful for your friends, the next day you can be grateful for a nice cup of tea that you made, and how that made you feel. So by the end of those 5 days, you have a lovely list of at least 15 things that, have brightened up your week. And you can come back to that and, kind of add to it as you want. And those would be really 3 concise tools to build and foster that gratitude, and see how that has an impact for yourselves. So I suppose we're coming to the end of our slides. And I suppose this is just a summary of what we would pull together from, myself, Leah and Laura, as the ingredients into this lovely chocolate cake with fudge fondant of resilience. I was watching the Great British Bake Off last night, so you'll have to forgive me. But yeah, so again, it's about pulling together all these different pieces. You don't have to be totally into any one of them. You can go along with whatever tool appeals to you most and see how that works. But these are a number of different areas for building that gratitude, being compassionate to yourself and the inner critic, gaining more of an awareness and being mindful in the moment around what your purpose is and moving forward with that action. So thank you so much for joining us. I think that's all from me. Ladies, if you'd like to add anything else?
I think you covered everything there. Thank you so much, Nisha, and thanks so much for everyone who tuned in. Keep an eye out, because the girls over at Student Counselling are doing fantastic webinars every single week. So keep your eyes peeled.
Everyone.
Yeah, so that's us. If you have any other questions or look for some more tips and practical strategies, you're more than welcome to contact us at studentcounselling@tcd.ie. We also have our kind of social media is TCD Headspace. And then I know, Leah, you guys are pretty busy on social media as well, so yeah, you can reach out in any which way.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. Thanks so much for joining us, guys. All the best.